Good morning and welcome to our weekly share. This session, of course, is, as you know, or the series is focusing on the Torah of Kelm. This week's Parsha is Parshas Trumah, but let's start with our dedications. A little boy who is waiting for the lung transplant, if you remember, or Chaim ben Chani Yehudis is in hospital. He's got a viral infection, and they've been treating it the last few days. It seems to have peaked is the word I'm looking for, peaked, which is good news, but we want to dedicate the share, obviously, for his complete refuah shlema and for the arrival of the successor donor to give him the lung transplant. So please keep him in your tefillas as well. For Rafal Chai Ben Sora, who is his doctors are trying to get to the bottom of why he's struggling with his condition. He should have a successful discovery and a refuah shlema. For Yecheskel Yehuda Ben Yenta, who's getting over, as you know, a major surgery now. It's strong. He should have refuah shlema. For Amram Ben Sora, a young married man in Manchester in England who got another mysterious infection that came from nowhere, and he ended up in hospital. He should have a refuah shlema as well. And for my dear wife, Ita Rivka Basima Esther, she should have a refuah shlema from the two knee transplants that she has had, and anything else that might be troubling her, excluding myself. Okay, so all should have a refuah shlema, and if you have somebody in mind, then please get in touch with me. We will dedicate the share for their refuah shlema, or for a happier occasion. Although having a refuah shlema is about the happiest occasion you could have. But if you have a bar mitzvah or a wedding or something like that, or to dedicate to somebody who is your side, please get in touch with me at askrabbiyyy.com. Okay, takes us to Parshas Trumah. Parshas Trumah is, of course, the next two Parshas are really focusing on the building of the Mishkan. The Mishkan, of course, is the prototype for the Beit HaMikdash. The first one lasts 210 years. The second one lasts 220 years. And the third one, the Meher speedily to be rebuilt in Yerushalayim, is going to last forever. But the Mishkan itself is a microcosm, and the Kabbalistic books make this quite clear. We're going to delve into this a little bit, and despite this being Torah's Kelm, don't make the mistake of thinking that because it's a literature place they were unconcerned or unfamiliar with Kabbalah. However, it's not the main focus, but we will be dipping into some Kabbalistic ideas because it's a microcosm of the entire universe. And if we look carefully at the structure, the dimensions, the materials, etc., of the Beit HaMikdash, or its prototype, the Mishkan, then you'll know precisely exactly how that works. And I'll give you at least one example as we go on here. Now, let's just open our little Art Scroll Cedar Chumash, if you have, not Cedar Chumash, our Art Scroll Cedar's a mistake, Chumash, and it's on page 444. There must be some Kabbalistic significance to that. And it's, so Parshas Trumah, and that, of course, is chapter Kohei, and it's Pasuk Aleph. So let's just read to get a little bit of feel for this. Of course, the Jewish people are invited to bring gifts: silver, gold, skins of animals, various beautiful materials, dyes, etc., for the completion of this beautiful peripatetic Beit HaMikdash, a place that's going to travel with the Jewish people on their travels through the desert over 40 years. The Jewish people have got the Torah. That's fine. And now the Luchas are going to have a place to be that's going to be the focus of the whole Jewish story. But there's going to be a slight problem. So let's see. V'yidaber Hashem al Moshe lemor, and Hashem speaks to Moshe. He says, "Daber over it." It says with the Jewish people, "V'yikhu li Trumah," and they'll take for me Trumah. And we're going to spend a lot of time analyzing that word li, to just say v'yikhu Trumah. That will take a Trumah. They should take an offering. But there's an extra word li for me. We'll see more about that shortly. May it's called Isha Sheyadvenali, but from every man whose heart is willing to give. It's got to be, as Rashi points out, a voluntary, an enthusiastic, a passionate donation. It mustn't be forced with their arms twisted behind their backs. As Trumasi was always the Trumah, and these are the things that I'm looking for. Etam, Zoho, Bakesam, and as we said before, various precious metals or important metals, copper, which is one of those hardly precious, but silver and gold is. The cheres vargamon, but a lot of shining them come to the various materials, the various wools, and so on and so forth, various colored wools. And then skins of animals, izim, oris elim, adomim, oris techoshim, ba'atzishitim, and the wood that can be used for the construction of the Mishkan. Shemelam oil, don't forget oil, besomim, and lots of beautiful oils and beautiful spices, avnisham, and precious stones. And then the osili mikdasham, I've just missed out most of that there, not reading it properly. You've osili mikdash, and then in Pasuk Ches, and make for me a mikdash v'shachanti b'socham, and I will dwell amongst them. Now notice it's amongst them, not in it. B'socho, I should say, in it, but it says b'socham. That's really what we're going to be focusing on in today's shir. So incidentally, this week I've started a bite-sized shir. You'll find this wherever you see this, the normal shir, also a bite-sized shir, which is a little abstract extract from this larger, more in-depth shir. And you'll find that if you're in the same place you get this, which is my YouTube channel or in Torah Anytime, at least I hope. I've not asked them yet. So it means you've just got a simple Dvar Torah based on what we're learning here to say over at the table. If you're not able to, after Shabbos, sit down and listen to the whole shir. I mean, why aren't you able to sit down and listen to the whole shir? But never mind. Okay, so basically, that's the idea. So HaShem wants a Mishkan, a Beit HaMikdash, in which He is going to be there. The Shekhinah, the presence of HaShem, is going to be there. The Jewish people will use that as their focus, and they'll come there, of course, 3 times a year, on the Eretz Yisrael, and the major holidays, in order to, as it were, reconnect to Hashem Yisborach. Now, of course, the word korban, the sacrifice, comes the word korov, to come close to Hashem Yisborach. That's the whole purpose of the Mishkan. And says the Alshich, how bizarre, how totally strange. This Jewish concept, it defies analysis. It really does. I'll read to you a bit of the Alshich. Now, the Alshich, of course, is not from Torah's Kelm, but as you know, it's in my DNA. So I've got to tell you some Alshich now and again, otherwise I will be disoriented for the whole week. This is the Alshich. Here's the Alshich. Notice yet again, I am afraid I've worn out another set of Alshich, although I actually had one set rebound in leather to be a family heirloom. So hopefully my children will have one. But I've worn out another set. I have a spare set. Anyway, so I hope you have an Alshich incidentally on. Anyway, he needs to send us Naim Shema Dover Azar Hazeh. So it's the Alshich. And this is going on, but Osali Mikdash. Make me a Mikdash, as we read, and I will dwell amongst them. What? Really? How could any human ear tolerate listening to this? Is it conceivable that Hashem, the infinite Hashem, beyond our comprehension, certainly beyond time and space, that His presence, or a part of His presence, but a part of an infinity is infinity, that you could squish an infinity and an infinite being, the infinite being, into a place on this planet, a tiny place on this planet, does not make any sense whatsoever. Shlomo Melech expresses this in Malachim Aleph Ches and Kov Zayin, Onam Yeshav Elokim al works rhetorically, and will Hashem really be able to live in the world? Of course, He builds the Beit HaMikdash. But the very concept, even Shlomo Melech, the builder of the Beit HaMikdash, which is going to achieve this somehow, points out that it doesn't make any sense. How can a finite space contain an infinite amount of anything? That's the basic question which the Alshich is dealing with, but we're going to go back to look at the Alshich shortly. Now, this idea of Hashem being able to be in Eretz Yisrael, in particular in Yerushalayim specifically, is a concept we can see in the if we look at it or answer the Alshich's question in a different way by looking. Now we turn to the Torah of the tradition of Kelm and to Reb Shlomo Wolbe. And Reb Shlomo Wolbe says something which is very, very insightful. He points out that when Moshe Rabbeinu sends in the Meraglim to spy out the land of Israel, he gives them instructions: look to see what the land is like, And Rashi points out, quoting the Medrash, some lands produce tall people, some lands produce strong people, some small people and weak people. Look to see if they live in fortified cities, meaning that they're weak because they have to build strong walls, or in open encampments, they're strong. They don't need walls to protect them, they can protect themselves. Certain lands produce certain things. And he says this is apart from being obviously at a mundane level a truth. However, it's a much more profound truth than that. And he focuses on the famous verse, Hashem fills the entirety of the world. Dr. Melech says that Shemaim is suffering for Kelm. If you look at the heavens, that gives you an insight into Hashem. But if you look at the world, you also get insight into Hashem. But in some places more than others. So therefore, if we say that truly Hashem is everywhere, of course that's the rather annoying to my ears little children's song, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. Yes, of course, a 5-year-old child is going to get that. Anyway, so basically, let's hear what he has to say. This is an Alshich base. An Alshich in page Nun base says, the whole world is full of the presence of Hashem, the honor of Hashem. Then was called Hevdel ben Yerushalayim, ben New York. There is no distinction, ultimately, objectively speaking, if Hashem's presence is everywhere. And by definition, everywhere is everywhere. And seemingly, clearly, equally everywhere, Hashem's presence is everywhere. And that is to say, there's no, therefore, distinction between Yerushalayim and New York. And he's even including Brooklyn. I kind of wonder if, for example, Bob actually saw parts of New York. Afal Peking, without making any more really bad jokes, this is a very serious point he's making. If Hashem's presence fills the whole world, then indeed there is no distinction between the two. Ultimately, the two lives in a world of ultimates. We live in a world of relatives. But still it is, despite the fact that objectively, ultimately, there is no distinction. Subjectively, there is. But the Talmud says quite clearly there are 10 madrigas, 10 dimensions of Kedusha, of spirituality, which are present in Eretz Yisrael. You won't find anywhere else in the world. It just contradicted the previous statement. But Eretz Ha'amim Eina, but that's Eretz Yisrael. And the lands of the nations of the world, the beautiful creation that Hashem has made. But in the lands outside the land of Israel, they fail to achieve these 10 levels of holiness, which are unique, specific, and only solely to be found in the land of Israel. And if it's true that the Kavod Hashem is everywhere in the world, what's the Talmud talking about? But those things that it has here, we can feel, you can see it there, that these 10 levels and dimensions of purity, we just contradict ourselves. Tshuva. Yeshnam makamas bali tavoim gasim shemeim ein kvod yisbarach murgish kol kach. Aha. Well, there are some places in the world where, even though our basic overarching statement is that Hashem is discoverable, apparent everywhere for those who look, but there are some places which tavoim gasim, that the nature of the world is gas, which is perhaps crude would be a translation. Where you won't feel it so much. If you imagine standing in the Alps, looking at the Swiss Alps, which is quite breathtaking, or the Scottish Highland Mountains, something like that. You can understand that inspiring you, but to stand in a desert, perhaps in the middle of the Sahara, just seeing one flat, immense, seemingly infinite expanse of yellow sand, not so much. There are certain places in the world which their nature is refined. It is so beautiful, which draws you closer to Hashem's Baruch, closer to Hashem, easier to make that connection. Ibn Ezra, that's why the Ibn Ezra says, Hashem echad v'ashinu yova mehabakablim. Of course, Hashem echad. Hashem truly is everywhere, but that perception of Hashem that's not always the same everywhere. It depends on the makabelim. And here he says that means the places themselves, whether it's so apparent, it's a psychological thing, that we feel Hashem in a certain place. So the idea that you would have a place where Hashem is, a Mishkan, well, one answer could be like Rishon Volba, that you feel, what it means is you feel Hashem there because of the luchos which are there, and the sacrifices which are offered there, the gathering of the Jewish people there, that actually that perception, because it's not a chiddush, Hashem is there anywhere, anyway, you just feel it more there. That would be one answer. But the Alshich has a different answer. And that is to say, this question which he raised about how could you think that Hashem, the infinite Hashem, could be, and his presence could be in any one place. And he answers the following, that, as I said before, that the Mishkan is a microcosm of everything in creation. And when I say everything in creation, then that means everything in the whole of the universe. And if you were able to decode properly the Mishkan, you would be able to have the answers to every question, black holes and supernovas and quarks and all the elements of the world and all the undiscovered elements and material in the universe. It's all there hinted at in the Mishkan. But there's something more, because there is a very important Talmudic teaching. It's a Talmudic teaching, let alone a Kabbalistic one, that the Beit HaMikdash shel Ma'ato mirrors the Beit HaMikdash shel Malo. That the construction that we're going to make in the Mishkan, the prototype of the Beit HaMikdash, is in actual fact a complete replica of the one in Shemayim, from which we get this Kabbalistic idea that the third Beit HaMikdash will not be built by us, merely descend from heaven and occupy its original location in Yerushalayim, supplanting the structure that's there at the moment and all structures that are there. More than that, it's clear, therefore, that how could it be that Hashem can be contained in this finite world and infinite? But if Hashem is in heaven, and one assumes that that's an infinite place, of course, I'm using language which itself is contradictory, because to talk about Hashem being in any place, even in heaven, is also just using human terminology to describe something which is beyond the human mind. But if it's easier for us to imagine Hashem being in an infinite place like heaven. So therefore, the reason that Hashem could be in this world, and this will very, very nicely converge with our theme from Reb Shlomo Volbo, is because what we've built, this replica of the Beit HaMikdash in heaven down here, is basically a mirror. It mirrors what's up there and in Shemayim. So therefore, as Hashem is clearly in Shemayim, then it's easy for us when we come to the Mishkan to get that feel of the Rabbanu Shalom. Fine. Now, there is a beautiful. Let's give you a taste of. Again, we're going to the Alshich. Let's work and have a taste of the structures of the Mishkan. So one of the structures of the Mishkan, obviously, is the Aron, the golden box, which is going to be constructed in order that the luchos, the tablets, the broken ones and the complete ones, are going to be housed in it. This will, of course, be the center of the Holy of Holies, which only the Kohen Gadol will enter in the holiest day of the year, which is Yom Kippur, the holiest time in Yom Kippur. And in that space, all the laws of physics are suspended. And all sorts of miracles are apparent and transparent. Right. So that's the center of, well, everything really. And in that box, the box itself is made of gold. There's wood, it's almost like a sandwich, gold and a little bit of wood in between the structure. There's a reason for that as well, which we're not going to go into this week, why it can be just pure gold. And the length of it is 2.5 amas. Now, an amma is the length of a man's arm from the elbow to the fist. So I'm 6'1", so I'm sort of a tall man, a tallish man. And therefore, my arm, it's about 1.5 feet. You know, it's about 18 inches roughly. Is my arm. And it's 2.5. So therefore, if I do that and that, and you add another half, so from there to there, onto the end of it. That was the length of the, so if I do it, it's about that length. That's the length, not huge, of the box. And then the width of the box is 1.5. So it's that, my arm plus another half, so it would be to there. So about that. Fine. And now there's obviously what that symbolizes is the Torah itself. That's what the Torah is going to live, and the luchas are going to be. But the interesting thing is what sits on top of it. What sits on top of the box is the lid, and the lid's got a special name, which is called the Parshas. So if the box and the structure of the box hints at all of the nature of the Torah, if we dissect it and we know the dimensions and we know the hints that are being given to the nature of the Torah through the materials and dimensions of the bulb. What about the lid, which is called a kaparis? Why is it called a kaparis? Well, the answer is because the part of human life that the lid symbolizes is marriage between a man and a woman. And how does that work? Well, it's really quite interesting that, of course, the Hebrew word for a man is ish, aleph, yud, shin. For a woman, aleph, shin, hey, ish and isha. And the distinction, the common letters are the aleph and the shin, aleph, which is, of course, ish, fire. And there's this beautiful little idea that if you've got God in your marriage, then you've got Yud. One of God's names is Yud Hey. So if you've got Ish with a Yud and Isha with a Hey, that's God's name, the Yud and the Hey. If you've got that in the marriage, then Ish and Isha can work. If you take out God from the marriage, you're left with Ish, and it's going to be a fiery, unpleasant thing. As an old friend of mine told me when we were both first married, and I was visiting him in Yerushalayim, a good marriage is heaven and earth, and a bad marriage, unsurprisingly, is the opposite, hell on the earth. Well, this beautiful idea, the Ish and Isha, we put Yud, Hey in it, then you've got, as it were, God with you, and everything's going to be, generally, as long as you're putting in the work and getting the advice when things go wrong, it's going to be good. That's the general idea. So, Ish and Isha. So God's name is Yud, Hey. Now, let's do gematrias, let's do dimensions, because, of course, we need measurements, and the letters in Hebrew turn into numerals. So therefore, Yud is 10 and Hey is 15. So we said it was 2.5 amas in length. Now, an amma, all the measures, by the way, of Judaism are parts of the human body. I said an arm, the length of a forearm. And that is, a fist is a tefach. So if you take an arm and you start putting tefachs into it, it's 6. So an amma equals 6 tefachim. Okay, so therefore let's look at our 2.5 amas. Our 2.5 amas, the length of the lid and the box, is 15 tefachim. So that smaller measurement, a foot, yard, meter, centimeter, etc., tefach, and then amma. So the 2.5 amas turns out to be 15 tefachim, 15 hinting at HaShem. If the marriage rests, if the marriage foundations, what it rests on, what it's built on, is Torah, then you'll have HaShem running all the way through the length of it. Nice idea. The width we said was 1.5 amas. So again, if a tefach, if there are 6 tefachim in an amma, we've got 9 tefachim in width. And that rings a marriage bell as well. The marriage bell is that when Hashem creates Adam and Rishon and Chava, he says, the Korah Shemam, and he called their names, they are plural, Adam, singular. The plural becomes a singular. As an old friend of mine, Rabbi Brody of Manchester used to say, in Judaism, 1 and 1 equals 1. When it comes to marriage, 1 and 1 equals 1. Because what's the tefach width of it? 9. The Korah Shemam calls their names Odom. Let's do the numerical thing again. Aleph is 1. Dalet is 4. Mem is 40, but you can use gematrias to reduce it to its basic structure. In other words, 40 is 4 tens. Take out the tens, and then again, you're left with a 4. It's called a mispar cotton. When you take the value and reduce it to its basic ingredient, 4, 5, the mispar cotton of 50 would be there for 5. 60 would be 6. 6 tens, 5 tens. Miss out the tens, and they were only talking about what it's multiplied by, 5, 4, 5, or 6, and you're left therefore with Aleph 1, Dalet 4, and 40 gives us 4 again, which gives us 9. Akora, Shamam, Odom. The 9 tvachim in width, they will become one. If the marriage is based on Torah, then the length of it, you'll have Hashem running through the length of it. You will become one. And there's nothing more beautiful than seeing an old couple who are clearly as in love with each other when they're very, very old, as when they were a young couple. I saw this a couple of years ago. I was speaking in Edgware in London at shul. Very nice shul, lovely rabbi, lovely little Babish guy. And I was going from various minyan to minyan to speak. And there was an old fellow. He was in his late 80s, and he was finishing the Haftarah, a beautiful voice. And he must have said this Haftarah many times. It was a bar mitzvah parsha. And he did this, even though he was very old. There was no vibrato, there's no quavering in his voice. So he completed his brochas. He got down from the small bima. The mechitza was a wooden partition with curtains, and the curtain opened, and this old lady looked at him as he got down, and there was a smile between them two, a smile which absolutely radiated love. And it was clear this was her chosen. Maybe she saw him do that on the Shabbos before they got married, and she's watched this for 60 something, maybe 70 years, with great love and affection. But if you get it right, a marriage, the Korishmam Odom, they become one. So if your marriage, it rests on Torah, the foundations is Torah, then you're going to have Hashem running through the length of it, not Ish, but Ish and Isha. The Ish and Isha will become one. And then, of course, what's on top of it? On top of it is 2 cherubs, 2 gold statues, a boy with the face of a boy and a girl. You'll be blessed with children who are pure gold. Well, of course, you have to put work into a marriage. You have to work up into raising children. But the basic structure is going to be, that's how a marriage works. Base it on Torah. A beautiful idea. It's an illustration of how it goes. But let's continue that illustration a little bit further. Because there's a beautiful medrash which answers our question right at the beginning. The Chuli Trumah, take me Trumah, take for me Trumah. It's a bit hard to translate that because it's a cumbersome word there, li. So the medrash says, take me. Hashem says, I'm going to give the Torah to you. So you have to take me as well. The shochanti, as we said at the beginning, and I will dwell amongst them. What does that mean? So the Medrash says he gives a motion. And of course, as it's a motion, there's going to be a king. So they had a king who had a daughter whom he loved very, very much. It was time for the girl to find a husband. As a prince from another country or a king from another country and wants to marry his daughter, it's a good marriage, it's a good shidduch. And so the king approves it, the couple get married, the wedding celebrations last for a month, and now it's time for the neighboring king to take his new bride back to his home, to his palace in his country. So the father says to his new son-in-law, I can't withhold my daughter from you. I love her. But I've given her to you as a bride. She's your wife. But I can't bear to be parted from her. So please do me a favor. Could you make just a little room, the smallest room in your palace, that I could stay in? I can't bear to be parted from my daughter. So that's the v'yichuli. You take me. In England, right, and the UK, this thing called a granny flat. Sometimes you make a little extension to a home, a self-contained unit, with a door that the grandmother can come through, or the grandfather or both can come through to the rest of the family, but have their own space as well. That's what's going on here as well. The king in the moshul is saying, I need a granny flat or a granddad flat because I can't bear to be taken away from my daughter. That's the moshul. The king, of course, is Hashem. The daughter is the Torah, which he's now given to the Jewish people. That was in Parshas Israel. Now there's got to be a place for the daughter to live with her new husband. That's the Jewish people. But Hashem says, I need a place to be. I can't bear to be parted from my Torah, my daughter. So make for me a little place. And that's going to be the Mishkan, and that's going to be the Beit HaMikdash. And I'll be able to dwell there with them. That's a A beautiful idea, if you come to the Beit HaMikdash, knowing that Hashem's there, can't bear to be separated from his Torah, the Trumah. I think it's beautiful. It goes back to what we said before, that if the marriage is built in the Torah, Hashem will be there running through the length of it, and it'll be successful. But here, again, Hashem is going to be there as well in this marriage, because this marriage between the Torah and the Jewish people is going to make sure that the father-in-law is there as well, letting us go on with what we have to do, but present, which is, I think, a beautiful idea. Maybe it's because I'm a father-in-law. But the Be'er Yosef, Sefer Be'er Yosef, incidentally, I wore this one out as well. I've got some tape. I'm going to repair this one as well. He says something which is very beautiful. He explains the Medrash and just adds one little thing. But of course, the father is only there living in the palace because the king, his son-in-law, is treating his daughter well. But if the king ignores the daughter, insults the daughter, abandons the daughter, commits adultery, has a harem, then this is not what I gave my daughter to you for. This was to be your wife that you treasured. Then the king will take the daughter and go away. In order to keep Hashem running through the length of the marriage, you have to treat the daughter, the Jewish people have to take the Torah with respect and love, and give it the attention that it needs, the daily attention. So that's why the Mishkan can be a focus for the Jewish people, to make us feel that psychological connection to Hashem's Baruch, to make us feel that, and truly, ultimately, that he is there, be aware of that, and act on it accordingly to honor his daughter, Hashem's daughter, our Torah, our bride, and to give it the respect that keeps Hashem's presence connected to be running from the length of the Jewish people. Hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to seeing you again next week when we'll do a little bit more. Good job.